What does logos mean? It meant more than just spoken words. Why? Because your spoken word is the connection between your idea and the world around us. How do you express your idea? With your word. So your word was symbolic for ideas, right? So this was the idea that was with God. It was in the beginning, and it was God.
Yeah.
So to me, that was my first understanding of the Trinity. That God had a thought, that God had a word, right? And that word was the Son. And then so it was this kind of intellectual appeal, right? If God is infinite and God is perfect, then his thoughts are also perfect, right? Then wouldn't his thoughts also be reality?
Yeah.
So it was this kind of intellectual kind of, and whether or not you agree with that, that's another story, but it was this kind of intellectual argument that drew me deeper into the desire to become Catholic. And another one is the nature of God, which is Exodus in chapter 3, where Moses goes up to the mountain and he asks God for his name, right? He asks God for his name. And God responds by saying Yahweh. What does Yahweh mean? It means I am who am, right? He who is. So to someone who just hears that, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? But they explain to me he who is, he whose nature is to exist. So if anything didn't exist at one point, then it's not God.
Yeah.
And it was just like this brilliant light that dawned upon me, right? Because what were the old religions, even with a lot of Taoism and Buddhism, right? Their gods come from something else, right? Or even look at the Roman mythology, right?
Yeah.
There was chaos, there was light, and from that came the Titans, right? They somehow clash, and then the Titans come out of that, right? And then the Titans clash, and then Zeus came out of that, and then he kills all of them, right? Or he traps all of them, he conquers all of them, right? In a bloody mess, in order to become the reigning supreme god. But then he goes and he seduces women, and he's an adulterer, and that doesn't make any sense, right? So this passage here, especially during that time when those kinds of gods were prevalent, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right? In our modern day, of course, God is infinite, whatever. We already know that because of our deep Christian heritage. However, back then, this was revolutionary, absolutely revolutionary. So that had a great appeal. And the bottom part is an explanation from the Catechism, if you care to read it. Right, and then so I wanted to talk about another thing that appealed to me was the idea of the covenant between God and man. It was a contract. It was a legal contract, which made a lot more sense to me as opposed to, well, God just loves us. It's this fuzzy feeling, Everybody goes to church and we all, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Like that to me, that made no sense to me. I did not care for that. So, but the idea of a covenant, a contract between God and man, the legal sort of language that the church used to describe it made a lot more sense to me, right? So the first covenant was Adam and Eve, right? Adam said, I created you, right? Do not sin and you shall be in this paradise. And of course they broke it. And then Abraham, right? Abraham's covenant with God.
Yeah.
Okay, he said, I will give you, your nation will be of the multitudes. I will bless you if you are the father of this new faith, right? And of course it was broken somewhere along the way. Okay? And then there was the Ark of the Covenant, okay, with the 10 Commandments and the manna from heaven. And of course they broke that covenant too. And then finally, the covenant of Christ. Right? Christ himself comes out and he says, I am the new covenant. I embody our contract. And our contract will be signed with my blood. He gives himself up. He sacrifices himself. It's because we've broken the covenant so many times. Though we are deserving of that death, he pulls it upon himself. So I thought that really, it just made so much more sense to me as opposed to this sort of abstract, there's a God who loves us. It was very systematic. And bringing it back to Noah's Ark. Okay, my answer for Noah's Ark. I found the answer to Mr. Painter's maybe lacking of explanation, right? So maybe Noah was on a boat, and maybe there was water as far as his eyes could see. There are other cultures at that time that also recorded a similar flood, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, we can assume that maybe there was a really giant flood, but maybe the whole world was just as far as Noah's eyes can see. That might be possible. And also the idea that he had hundreds of years to live maybe that he had hundreds of years to live. That he lived till he was 700, 800 years old. Yeah, however long it was. The cultural context of that script is that blessings were counted in years. So it's possible that the number of blessings is just equated to, it's just expressed as a number of years that you live. So he might have been actually 700 some years old. It might have just been a way for them to express that he was very blessed, that he was overwhelmed with blessings from the Lord. And this kind of idea that Catholicism allows for different possibilities, right? That because we don't know what really happened. So it might have been possible that the whole world was covered in water. I have no idea, right? It might have been possible that he really did build a big enough boat to house every single animal. That's possible, right? So the idea that the Catholic faith, it really isn't that rigid because we don't know, right? Because we don't know. So it allows for other possibilities. So I think that if we spread the idea that faith and reason of the church is not one amongst many, it is not a road, it is not just a life, but it is the correct way, that it is the fulfillment of life, then I believe that we will win legions for God's army, and it will be in the multitudes. Thank you.
Thank you.